Welcome to Two Humans Talking, the podcast where we talk about what it actually looks like to be healthy and stay healthy in this modern, fast-paced, ever-changing world. I'm Tiffany Simms, your holistic wellness coach, and today I am here with Anna Charles. And if you're a woman who has been wondering what your relationship with alcohol might be, whether it's maybe you're thinking, am I drinking too much? Am I setting a good example? My friends seem like they're like, things aren't connecting unless we're drinking. Like, what are my options? And you're just getting really curious about your relationship to alcohol, good or bad, then today's episode is going to be for you. I hope you stick around. So Anna, thank you so much for coming in today and just being willing to share with us, woman to woman, about this conversation, because I think so many of us struggle with our relationship with alcohol. And not even just within ourselves, but our relationship to alcohol and how to talk about it to other people if it comes up in conversation. And so, if you don't mind kicking us off, who are you? Where do you live? Where would we find you on a Saturday? Like, what's something that makes you uniquely you? And then we'll hop on in.
Okay, yeah. So I live in Europe. Actually, live all over the place. So I'm currently in Switzerland, but often in London. Yeah, I am a sort of a corporate escapee, I like to say. So for many, many years, was in corporate. Actually, I worked in America for a large amount of time. Big jobs, lots of responsibility, fantastic life, fantastic husband, family, all the rest of it. I just thought I drank a bit too much white wine. And it kind of grew up on me bit by bit by bit. And then when I sort of thought, oh my goodness, I've got to do something about that, that was a scary moment because I found out it was very difficult to do that. So we can talk about that. Where you'll find me on a Saturday, I love going out. I have a very simple life these days. I love going out to go and get a cup of coffee, go for a bit of a walk, just see what's happening, see what's changing, see what's going on, and reading books. And I'm actually working on a book about alcohol as well at the moment. So I tend to spend a lot of my weekends working on that, going through draft 2 right now.
That's so awesome. I am also an outside girly. Like, I really enjoy walks. And I was thinking about this morning as the dog and I were taking our morning lap. I live on a river on one side and there's a lake on another, and we walk down this road through the neighborhood, and I'm just looking at all of like the summer flowers that are starting to bloom, and like how the lake, even just the flowers around the lake, there's always something new blooming, which means that something's always dormant while something else is thriving, and then it has its moment, and then something else has its moment, you know what I mean, why the other flower starts to regerminate and start its life cycle all over again. And I paused and I was just like, man, it's so crazy to me that there are so many humans in the world that are so worried about, like, are just so in that, like, I gotta get by and survive mentality, that like they don't even have moments in their day to even just pause to be and see everything that's so beautiful and cool around them. And I used to be one of those people. And it was just like a really big moment of just reflection for me today. And so I'm a walker too, I guess, is what I was sharing, because it's centering. It reminds me that I'm not alone on this planet and that everything is beautiful and like it all has purpose.
You talk, so my mum was a big wildflower. She loved, and she taught that to me. And so, especially in the spring and early summer, when you get the cows, I don't know what you call them in America, but the cow slips come out, and I would just go gaga over these delicate little, they're just the most beautiful, and they always appear, like you say, and I can just stand and gaze at them. That's just phenomenal for me.
Nature, sometimes just being in it is really a great metaphor for life so often, because this one flower is not questioning why it doesn't look like this other flower. It's not questioning why it didn't grow faster or bigger or stronger than the other ones. Like, it just is exactly what it is,
Yeah.
and with no explanation.
Yeah.
And when I think about, like, us talking about alcohol and whether it's for us or not for us, or for us in moderation or what have you, like, would life look like if everyone was free to just be who they are without explanations and try things to see what works for them?
And actually, it's interesting that one of the things that happens, one of the reasons why we get stuck when we get to the point and we say, look, I think I want to rein this in a little bit, is that we do that. A lot of people say, right, that's just it. I'm just going to stop. I'm going to try and be perfect. I'm going to do dry January, whatever. But then the moment we remove alcohol, we are then left with our life. I mean, that is then the truth of our life, everything, the warts and all. And people are like, oh, I don't want to see this. No,
I
can't
don't
have
want to feel any of this.
Right. And then we go right back to it. And then because what we find is we find at both extremes, right? We'll find, oh my gosh, this feels really awful. Whatever the emotion is, the stress, that's a huge one. So with a lot of corporate people, the stress at the end of the day, just can't hack it, right? That's why we numb it down. But on the other end, talking about the flowers and the beauty and so on and the simplicity, we don't see those things. We numb our joy. We numb the connection, we numb all those other things because we are not really present. We are thinking things like, when is the next glass of wine coming? Or, one of my favorite things is we talk about sunsets, right? So that's one of nature's most beautiful things. How many times would I sit and think, this is a really lovely sunset. This would be so much nicer with a glass of white in my hand, right? And then when we are used to that, you remove the white, the sunset isn't as nice. But the sunset is the same. The sunset is gorgeous and beautiful on all those other things. It's just our interpretation isn't so good because we think it needs topping up, right? With a bit of fermented liquid, which is banal. It was bizarre, really.
How did you, how did you even like, what was happening in your life where you were like, really what was going on internally when you started saying like, I think that I might be drinking too much, or I'd like to drink less? What was really going on for you internally? What was that thought process like?
It was actually control. That was the big thing that happened to me because I pride myself on being somebody who sets goals and achieves goals. I mean, that was happening in my life. Again, I had a very, wonderful life. And I like to know what's going on. I'm quite not a control freak, but I have a very organized and orderly life. And I remember this one time, because drinking and cooking was my thing, was my big, big thing. And I remember I was laying out the ingredients for dinner one night, and there on the surface was a glass of wine next to the onions, right? A full glass of white wine next to the onions. And I had no recollection of pouring it. I didn't, it was just, where is this coming from? And I realized it had become a habit that I couldn't get my arms around. And that was really scary. I did not like the idea that I was doing something without really realizing it. And so I just said, that's it. I just want to get this control back. For me, it was really all about control. And I didn't, the idea of not drinking, I mean, I just couldn't countenance it. I mean, the idea of no Chablis was my big thing ever. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't drinking at 9 a.m. It was only it's this very habitual conditioned response. But I thought I just don't like that I don't have the control. And that was when the problem started, was how do I stop this? I found I couldn't. And that was it was really quite scary. It's like, okay, come on, Anna, right? Tonight, we're just going to have the one, or we're not going to have any. It's like, 3 o'clock you start to think about it. 4, you start to think about it. 5, 6, go on, we'll start tomorrow. And again, I didn't have a physical addiction or anything, but it was this very habitual default response. And it was like, I'm just not going to, I don't like that I can't change this. And so I said, I'm just going to do this because this is not how I want to, because then everything starts to form around it. You find it very hard to read books after dinner, right? You try reading a book after you've had 2 or 3 glasses of wine.
It's not working so well.
You can't do it so well.
Yeah. I have a hard time keeping focused on books when I'm not impaired, yet alone if things were a little fuzzy. When you were sharing just then about that like obsessiveness of like it always being on your mind and waiting for the reward at the end of your day.
Yeah.
I never experienced that's like I don't really drink now, very rarely, but mine wasn't from that point of view of like it was always on my mind. For me, that was food and my like relationship with food that I had to heal, and
Mhm.
part of the binge eating disorder that I had developed. And so like I very much could feel those feelings as you were sharing for food,
Right,
as you were describing how you felt that way with alcohol. For
right.
me, with the alcohol, it was more so I started training for my first half marathon. And the first time I went out on a Friday night and tried to run the next morning, I was like, this isn't going to work for me.
No.
Like, we're just gonna like partying on a Friday, going out with my friends on a Friday night and drinking and like getting drunk and like having a good time. Not this season. I'm focused on this race. And I remember having finished my first half marathon, coming back home the next weekend. I'm like, I'm back, friends. I can come out and play.
Yeah.
And realizing that I didn't like the way I felt. I didn't like the way I felt the next day. I didn't like that that when I drank, like I was in the bathroom most of the night. Like all of this stuff that had seemed so normal and part of the drinking
Yeah.
experience prior to my half marathon was suddenly like, now that I know what better feels like, I don't like this.
Right. And the
And
beauty of that, but yeah, because you interrupted it. You interrupted the habit through the half marathon. That's
yeah. And then all of a
powerful.
sudden it's like, I'm like, oh, you're just being silly. You've just been out of it for a while. You're just being a lightweight. Like, it'll be fine. And then after a few weeks, it was just noticing that, like, if I was offered a drink, I'd be like, nah, I'm good. And now here we are almost 10, 14 years later.
Yeah.
And like, I just very rarely, we were out the other weekend and some margarita was like a special. And I was like, oh, that sounds really tasty. I want one. And the people at the table were like, you never drink. Are you okay? And I was just like, yeah, I'm fine. You don't always order loaded French fries. Like, what's the difference? And halfway through it, I was just kind of like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like the way my stomach feels. I'm already bloated.
Yeah.
Like, but I've never had to explain why I don't drink and defend it so
Mhm.
hard. No, like no one asks a crack addict why they stopped crack.
Exactly. Exactly. And you do and total this is wild. I think the total strangers will be thinking, why aren't you drinking? Are you an alcoholic? Do
Are
you
you
have a
pregnant?
problem? Are you pregnant?
No, I'm just
Maybe, and people make up all these excuses like, oh, I've got to get up early but it's because we have, and of course that then a lot of people who want to cut back find it very difficult because then they do wonder, am I the not normal one?
or
You
my
know,
favorite next to being are you pregnant is, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were sober. I'm not
yes.
sober. I just don't enjoy alcohol and I'm good.
Totally. I mean, for some people, going sober and being part of that movement works for them. And it's like, great. But for me, it was never a thing. I mean, I don't like labels. I don't have to say, rah, rah, I'm this. I just really, these days, I really don't drink at all. I don't actually like it. The other day, we were driving through France and my husband ordered a half bottle of the local champagne. And I said, give me a tiny sip. I'll have a little sip just to try it. Didn't like it, but I tried it, and there's nothing wrong with that. And also trying to have these conversations with waiters about what you're drinking, because I like to drink my water in a wine glass, because I don't like that when if you have the water, you have to have the kids' tumbler, right? This clunky, ugly glass sort of I like the full through the lovely pretty glass. I just don't want the alcoholic liquid in
I
it, right?
love that.
Yeah.
That's so fun. That is so fun. But yeah, there's more to, I don't know if this is true or not. This is your wheelhouse. This is the thing that you
Yep.
do for a living, working with people. I found that in my experience that most of the time where I have to like where people are asking questions, it's more trying to justify their own actions than anything about me because now I've made them feel abnormal. Like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you want to enjoy this?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? Do I trust you? Because like I can't imagine a world where I didn't have this because this is how I get by.
Exactly. And you know what I always say when people say things like, "You're spoiling my fun. Who am I going to drink with now? What are you going to make me not do this now?" All they are thinking about with those questions is themselves, right? What does this mean for me that you're not drinking? Are you spoiling my fun? And so I say, just flip it and say, what do you want out of something? So for heaven's sake, do not drink because you think you owe it to somebody. They're thinking of themselves. You think of yourself. Their experience comes from how they're thinking about it, not from what you are doing. And you're absolutely, and so I also say to people, if you really feel that you're being quizzed, I used to imagine that they're thinking, wow, look at her control. She really knows what she wants here. I wonder how she's doing it, right? So again, have you think what they are when they're quizzing you, you're not under the cosh for them, but they're just in awe of you, right? And then because then that makes you feel better, and then you're going to carry on and take yourself through.
Can we share, since we both are, we're not sober, we're not anti-alcohol, we're just pro what feels good in our own bodies and is good for us.
Mhm.
Um, I think it would be really helpful to share maybe some of the things that you and I say in those conversations where it catches someone off guard. Because I think in the beginning, there's a lot of word vomit that comes out of our mouth, trying to defend ourselves, trying to protect ourselves, trying to keep ourselves from being ostracized and like stoned at the same time. So for you, like what are some of the things that you say when someone starts grilling you about why don't you drink?
I actually keep it really, really simple. And I think it's what you said a little just now. I just say I prefer not to. It's really that. I mean, that really is. And if I get asked about it, it's like, well, it's just a choice. And I also turn it on to them. Why do you drink? Right? I'll
Mm.
have this type of thing. So why are you so interested? Right? Sort of you can go a little, that's a little spikier, I would say, sort of a little bit more combative, but most of the time I just say, look, I just prefer not to. What I do find is that friends, people are really actually all right about it. The friends, the people that you care about, who you really want to be hanging out with, who don't mind whether you drink or not. And that those who, where it really is an issue. I mean, I have a couple of friends. I was talking about it with my husband the other day. We used to go to see them, we would sit in the bar. We went to their village where they lived, this beautiful village up a mountain. It was beautiful. And we'd sit in this dark bar all weekend because that was what they liked to do. And it's like, I don't want to do that.
No.
I don't want to do that anymore. So they stopped being friends. And then I don't really care what those people, but yeah, I just keep it simple. I just keep it simple. But I do say to people, practice because you will feel like you are, and you don't have to defend it, but just to help you, just have
And
one
it's
thing that
new
you're
to
going to
you
say.
too. And so like
Yes.
it's uncomfortable at first. I used to make first I made up excuses about how I had things to do in the morning or I had to like
Yeah.
be somewhere really early, whether I did or not, because I felt like that would
Yeah.
be how can they argue with that? They can.
Yeah.
Um, and then I would get really defensive about it. No one wants to hang out with someone if they think you're judging them. They're too busy judging you. They don't want to be judged back.
Mm-hmm.
And now 14 years later, it really is if someone asks, like, I just don't like the way I feel. Like, I get bloated. It doesn't really work for me. Like, it's just not enjoyable. But well, are you going to have a good time? I want to make sure you're good. And it's like, I'm a blast. I'm going to have a great time. Like, it's good. And then you just go about and redirect the conversation. And I
Yeah.
love that you brought up like friends because sometimes we do outgrow our friends based off of the choices and the lifestyles that we want to experience. That doesn't make our new choices wrong or their choices wrong either. It just is a difference of how we want to spend our time.
Correct. And I can tell you, I mean, the very close friends. I mean, I have some very close friends, and some of them drink quite a lot, and that's fine. It's totally fine. In fact, I love it. I love it when I go to their parties and we're staying over, and they're all getting really drunk because they all think they're really, they're most knowledgeable people, and they're repeating themselves. And I just think that's fun. I mean, because that's them. being them, and they don't mind what I have or what I don't have, and they'll always have my, because for me, the San Pellegrino water, I love that. For me, that is just the most delicious, fizzy, sparkling mineral water in a green bottle. If I have a bottle of that, and people buy that, say, we've got your water in, Anna. It's like, oh, that is so lovely, because I'm thought of in the same way that they've bought the wine or they've bought the beer or whatever. They've got the flowers and they've got Anna's water. And it's like, oh, thank you.
I love that. And
Yeah,
that, and the truth is that those relationships wouldn't be cultivated that way if you didn't come to the table of just like with your preferences. Because as a friend, if you are vegan, I make sure that there's something for you to eat that's not just coleslaw,
yeah.
or a side of veggies. Like I'm very intentional about making sure that you have a whole meal if
Mhm.
you were to come to my house. And so, like, why should that be any different?
Exactly. And you can have, people don't believe me to start with. And so I say, what happens when you cut back on your drinking is, to start with, I just want you to imagine that you can have, that it's actually okay, right? It's not going to be terrible. It's going to be okay. We'll start there. We sort of, and then we move up to neutral. It's actually really quite fine. It's one of the things my clients say if they do an alcohol-free day, or they had just had the one. They say, it was actually fine, Anna. But when we want to celebrate, we want to celebrate. We don't just want it's fine. So then you move into, actually, it really was a good time, to it was better, right? It for sure was better. Because when you are not drunk, you are listening, you are connecting more. We went out to dinner with these friends, some good friends, and I think one of them had a gin and tonic. My husband had a glass of wine, and the other friend, I think she had a gin and tonic. It was all evening. I had the water. We were the first in the pub. We were the last to leave, and we were the rowdiest, noisiest, laughingest table in the whole place. We had and the alcohol played like a minuscule element of that, but it was still there. They had the drink, I didn't have the, and it just shows.
And I think that is super, super important. Something I want to highlight real quick. If you cannot handle your friends not drinking, then it's a good moment to question why you were friends anyway, because we've
Yeah,
all had those seasons where our friends, we were only friends with these people because we ended up going to the same places together.
yeah,
And now that I'm not drinking and I don't want to be out until 3 o'clock in the morning or in these dark, dingy bars, and I want to experience life differently, we have nothing in common. And that is okay too.
yeah,
Because there are plenty of people who want to go experience life with you, maybe at 8 a.m.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's actually a tip. If people are really, they want to change their relationship with alcohol and they still want to keep in with their friends. And I find this particularly actually with the men I work with, because a lot of men, a lot of their activity, their companionship, I find, is around drinking. It's just to change the time of day you meet with people, and change what you do with people, right? So maybe do a sporting thing, meet them for coffee, right? Because when people say, I say, would you want to have, would you feel really triggered? Let's say there's someone you spend time with and you drink a lot with them. Would you feel triggered at 9 to drink with them? I said, no, 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 of course not. Right. So change those times of day. And again, if they are good friends, they'll go with that. And that just makes it a little easier on yourself to start with. That's not to say you should avoid going out in the evening. I say, never say run away from that, because temptation is going to be everywhere. We need to woman up to it and just go out there and face up to it. But you can swap things around. So what you do is different.
And it's also okay to make different recommendations. If someone asks you to go to a place that's just serving alcohol, you can say, do you want to just like, do you want to meet up at like 7:30 for this? Actually, you know what? How about, would you be okay if we met at 6:30? We went here instead so that I can get a bite to eat?
Exactly.
And now it's allowing them, they can still order drinks. You
Yeah.
can order whatever it is, beverage that you want to drink. You can get some food. You can socialize. And now you're still hanging out and creating those connections without putting yourself in a situation where, because we've all been there, and you're standing there and you're like, I don't want to be here. Like, this is
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't,
Yeah.
to be quiz. And so it's okay. Like I found that to be really helpful is just offering a new activity or a different
Yes.
place. Um, and most people, if they truly want to hang out with you, have no qualms with it.
No, of course, no, of course not. No, no. And I always say also if you know if you're going to, I used to go to these corporate events, right? I was the boss of this department, and they were excruciating because we'd have all the customers come in, all the reseller partners, sort of an unspoken rule that you couldn't leave the customers in the bar, to stay up with them. Oh, it was just not a very I was very shy back then, and so I'd have some drinks just to feel less socially anxious, as I say. And then I've learned now, looking back, I wish I could have said, Anna, you're going to feel a little bit anxious. These events are probably pretty boring. I mean, they are probably pretty boring anyway, because pretty much everyone's there when they don't really want, and that's okay. You don't have to try and make this something that you really want to do. We all do things we don't want to do, and you certainly don't need the white wine, to
I love that.
tolerate it. Yeah.
I love that so much. And so like I shared in the beginning that for me, this how you talk about alcohol is how I was my relationship with food. And when I started going to events like that, focusing on who can I meet and what can I learn about them, the less I would eat
Yeah.
because I was using food as a way to avoid and distract and to occupy myself because I felt like I didn't know how to interact with people at the
Yeah.
time. And so I started saying like, what if I today, instead of worrying about like what I'm going to say, how I'm going to impress these people, what if I just genuinely got curious and started talking to people to meet them for being who they are and see where the conversation goes? And all of a sudden, I would go home feeling less icky because I hadn't just eaten for 5 hours straight trying to get by. And I had such a better
I was
time
going to say, I bet you had a better time too, because you're going towards it. You're going
connecting,
towards something. Yeah.
human
Oh, that's so
connection.
good.
People love talking about themselves. And if
It's
you are
true.
a person who is truly interested in getting to know people, you can learn a lot and make someone feel comfortable. They'll share about their kids, how they play golf, like that they've been woodworking on the side. Like, and it gives that, and it's a gift to other people because they're just as nervous and anxious and trying to figure out how to show up their best so that they can get your business or make that connection. And so, like, if you can help another person have a moment to feel like a human, what a gift, double win.
That's so brilliant. Really, because again, going toward and you're getting what you want. You're going towards something rather than, oh, I've got to because it would be, I don't know if you had it with food. I've got to hold myself back. Right, tonight we're going to be really good. We're going to do this one thing, and then but everything when then will be a challenge when the waitress is coming around. Okay, we're not going to have any more. Right, we're not going to do tapas. We're not going to. It's all these rules. Don't do this. Don't do this. This is how. When you could be just spinning it and say, okay, let me, because I remember actually being in a dinner party when I was doing this. I was sat by this gentleman, didn't know him at all. And this was in the early days of not drinking so much. I'm thinking, okay, right, here we go. We're going to, because, on these tables, you need to talk with the person you're next to. Oh my goodness. Most amazing conversation. He was responsible for doing the landscaping of golf courses. I would have thought that's a really boring topic. Not at all. We had the most amazing conversation. And I would never in a million years have had that conversation had I been drinking, because I wouldn't have been listening for a start, and I'd have been all about the wine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it so much. And now, are there, if someone, there's if the person is still listening to us because we've been chit chatting for a bit now, so I assume if a woman is still here listening to us talk about this, that there's something that she's interested about, curious about, something is resonating for her. Are there like 3 questions that she could be asking herself that could help her map what her next choice is or what the right choice for her is?
Yeah, I would say one of the best things you can do is use awareness, right? Start to become very aware of what's going on, because habits love to work when we're not being conscious, right? They live in the deep, dark caverns of the mind. It's just automatic behavior. So one of the key questions actually is, how am I feeling right now? Right? How am I feeling right now? And then secondly, what am I seeking right now? Because even when we think we're seeking the red wine or the beer or whatever, actually we're not. That's sort of a proxy. So for instance, when I was talking about those corporate things, I was seeking confidence. That was what I was seeking. And then just being okay with that, right? Just we do not have to solve our feelings. So what am I feeling right now? What am I seeking right now? And if you can do that, that will stop you and zero you in on what you're doing right now. And then I think, not related to that, but of a different type of question, is really just to ask, what is possible? What is possible? So if you're listening to this, you're thinking, oh, that sounds so good. You know, what you're saying, Tiffany, about food, and what Anna's saying about wine, I just can't imagine that. It's just not me. Just pause for a second and let your imagination go there, that this is possible for you. And let that be the fuel from which you take action. That's where I start with all of my clients always, that this is possible, this is done, this is our reality. We're just making our way there.
And the thing that I love about saying this is just my reality is that it makes it so uniquely yours.
Yeah.
And no one can argue with your experience because it's yours, and your experience means nothing about someone else's experience.
Yeah.
And
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, because you'll find one of the difficult things, and this is why I think working with people like coaches and stuff can help us, because we expect people around us to understand our experience, and they really don't. If they don't struggle, so for instance, if I would never struggle with food, I would find it very difficult to understand that, right?
Yeah.
And then to
It'd be like, just don't eat
supportive.
it.
Right, just don't have, sorry, don't have the drink.
Just don't eat it. Like, what's the problem here?
I know. It's like, and then they try to be really supportive, and then after 3 days, it's like, I keep telling you, just don't have the drink, and tempers flow.
And as the person in it, it's like, well, duh, if that was an option, don't you think I would just do that? You said something, and I'm going to see. We don't have to solve our feelings.
Yeah.
What a quotable moment.
Yeah.
We don't have to solve our feelings. We just have to recognize they're there and make adjustments to get a different result than what we currently have.
Yeah. We're humans. We are designed to feel. This is what we are designed to do. And we have, some days are good, other days are less good. And if you think about, people talk about, drowning our sorrows if our pet dies or something. I say, well, how do you want to feel? If your pet dies, do you probably want to feel sad?
Yeah.
You probably don't want to be kicking the light fantastic and saying, I am so full of joy. Right? So we don't need to solve
then you'd
that.
be like, what is wrong with me?
Right. Exactly. And then we would drink because of
why
that.
am I not upset? What is wrong with me?
Exactly. Yeah. It's so feelings to come, feelings go, learning how to manage the feelings. If we learn how to do that, hence back to my questions earlier, what am I feeling right now and what am I seeking? So what feeling am I seeking? If we can just ask those and be good with those answers.
Oh my goodness.
It makes it so much easier. And we don't need to use willpower or count days or go to AA or whatever. None of that is necessary.
Willpower and discipline are not a long-term strategy.
No.
They just aren't. And so, oh my goodness, this was so good. How do people connect with you, Anna?
So the best way probably is through my website, which is 90dayslater.co. So 90dayslater.co. And and you can connect with me on there, and it'll send me an email, anna@90dayslater.co. That's the best way.
Go chat with Anna, because the skills that she's talking about, when you can master the skills in one area of your life, such as overcoming your relationship with alcohol, they become a superpower skill set for you to then tackle every other area of your life that you are looking to improve and grow upon. And so go connect with her so you can learn those skills. And Anna, thank you so much. With that, that's T Humans Talking. I'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and actionable as I did. If you're ready to stop just surviving and start living a life where your health, your relationships, and your career work together without the burnout, then it's time that you join the Modern Women's Society. Inside, I'll walk you through my life GPS system, a proven blueprint to help you have it all while thriving. You'll gain tools, coaching, and the kind of clarity that brings big dreams to life without the stress, overwhelm, guilt, and shame that the modern woman is used to. We're going to create a life where you feel energized and excited to wake up every day and fulfilled when you put your head on the pillow. Click the link below to learn more and join countless other women who are redefining success on their terms. Because the life you've dreamed about is closer than you think. I'll see you on the inside.